I wanted to get on stream today because I've been posting a whole bunch of stuff on Twitter, Blue Sky, just about art struggles. I've been getting a ton of questions and I wanted to give people a chance today to ask me face to face their questions so that I can answer things that I maybe couldn't answer on Blue Sky or on Twitter. Is anybody going through art block? Is anybody struggling with comparing yourself to others? Do you have trouble getting started? Motivation? What do y'all want to talk about today? I'm here for you. This is a you moment. I'm here for you. Stuck doing the same art because it's not finished yet. I feel stuck and unmotivated to continue. That's what I've been struggling with. Let's dig into that because I think that it's really easy to assume that there isn't something there. However, let's talk about this. Ganryuki, when you think about doing the art, what are the thoughts that come up? You're like, I know I want to finish this. I know there's more to do. Can't bring myself to do it. Why? What are the thoughts? Dealing with big artist burnout. I've been doing art for 14 years. I have an art degree and no process for making art. I want to do this so bad, but it's been getting hard. Lich, tell me a little bit about, was there a period where making art felt exciting and worth it? And what did that look like? I want to go back to that time. Art felt the best when I was a teenager. No pressure to be the best, earn money. Now I want to challenge myself, be the best I can, and it can be exhausting. Lich, I wonder if what you need right now is more of what it was like to create when you were younger. And I know that that sounds paradoxical because when you want to make money or you want to find some kind of success in this, for, to kind of like think, oh, I'll just, be relaxed and be a kid again and just have fun, that doesn't feel like it's in alignment with our goals. But if we're not drawing or we're not enjoying drawing or everything is just this constant pressure and we're exhausted, how are we supposed to create at a consistent pace in order to make this our career or to grow our skills? And so I think that it's important to go back to that time and let the inner child in you have some of that not as much pressure, like take some of that pressure off. What about competition between artists? At what point does it become unhealthy? I think when you start looking at your peers as competition at all, that is going to put you into a mindset of scarcity. Like it's going to feel like there's not enough to go around. And if you're an artist in this space, you know how difficult it is at all to make it on your own. It's really hard, mentally, emotionally, physically. Like, if you think about it this way, if you look at every single artist as your competition, you're gonna be in defense all the time. You're gonna be thinking, I can't share their work. I can't connect with them. Oh, they're drawing what I draw. I back off, right? I think that mindset is more harmful to the artist who feels that way than anything else, because your peers are your connections. They are, in a lot of cases, they're your support. And if you are looking at them as competition, it's going to be so hard to keep going forward. It's going to feel like everyone is out to get you and that there's not enough to go around. And quite frankly, that's incorrect. There is plenty to go around, but it's not going to serve you to think that everyone is, comparing to everyone kind of feels like everyone's your enemy. And so keep them away. Keep them at arm's length. Like, don't let them in. Don't learn from them. Don't connect with them. Don't build friendships. And I think these things are very important for us creatives. See my heroes in the art world, past and present, as my competition, not as my enemy, but as friendly rivalry to improve. At least that is my perspective. I've learned so much from my top 3. I think, like, I get where you're coming from, because I feel like, when we all begin this journey, there's someone that sets us off on this path. And I think that I don't know if I would ever describe it as competition. to me, it feels like inspiration. Competition, in my mind, it kind of creates this distance or like a separation between you and that person. That, you know, there's like this sort of at odds feeling. And that may just be like semantics, you know, it might not necessarily even, it can mean two completely different things to us. But I think using them as inspiration and not as competition, I think is far more powerful. Never been good at self-advocacy, so that sentiment of being outcompeted constantly really resonates with me. So like, Glow, you have a hard time, you know, sharing your work or like standing up for your work. Is that what you mean? And I think that that's something, I mean, in today's world where social media is very present in everyone's life, to not show up and share your work, I think there's a whole lot of guilt behind that as well. And for some people, I actually think getting off of social media could be really beneficial. I've had a lot of students come to me and tell me that they have a hard time comparing themselves to others, and they actually benefited the most when they got off social media for a little while and just focused on themselves. So if you find yourself constantly comparing to others or kind of stuck behind this feeling of I need to do better because XYZ is doing this and that, it's not a negative thing to get off social media. You can always return to it. You can also come back to it with new goals, new priorities. But if that's something that's holding you back, I mean, you're sort of doing yourself a disservice if you continue to use the platforms in that way, or you continue to give in to that urge of like, I've got to check up on what other people are doing, or I have to make sure that I'm keeping up with everyone else. There's a lot of pressure behind that, and that's going to affect your work. I have not thought my stuff has really improved, even though I know it has. Glow, do you have a method of like checking your progress? Like, do you have like a weekly reflection or something where you can look at your work and say, here's what I've learned, here's where I want to go? Like, do you have anything like that? I think that would really benefit you. How do you break the habit of feeling like you need to pump out art fast to get seen? I'm still trying to get away from the mindset I developed from X. On X, I always felt like I had to get out art fast or my account would be tanked. I think I'm still scared of that, even though Blue Sky is not like that. So this is a tough one. I feel you 100%. I'm in the same boat as you, where it's like, if I'm not keeping up with social media, I'm gonna drift into the void, right? I think that's a really valid fear. So I think it's important to remember that the faster you try to get work out, that is going to affect the quality of your work. And so if you find that putting out work faster and faster diminishes the quality, I would much prefer, and myself included for this, and this is why you see less of my art than you do of like my motivational stuff or my educational stuff, but it's much more beneficial to take that time to develop your work, because if you are an artist who's posting on social media, the art is the core of your work. And so if you're just pumping stuff out for the sake of getting it out, the quality will go down unless you're just like an insanely fast artist, which I know very few people that are just like pumping out work left and right, and they're like okay with that. I've had much more benefit from posting about things that are tangentially related to my art, whether it's the motivational stuff, the educational stuff, maybe it's stuff about me or like my cats or something like that. This is all stuff that you can still share on socials that doesn't need to directly be, here's a new piece of art. Or you can brainstorm different ways of sharing the art. Like maybe you share work in progress, maybe you share video process, maybe you do polls of like, here's what I'm gonna do next, what do you wanna see? There's so many things, and maybe you can pull some inspiration from some other artists who are sharing their work and they're getting a lot of engagement. See what they're doing, because most of the time it's not just, here I am pumping out a ton of content for social media or like a ton of finished pieces. They are what I like to call nurturing the post, in the sense that they make content, they make multiple pieces of content out of one art piece or many things that they're doing. So maybe brainstorm some things that you think might work for that, and then you won't feel the pressure of having to constantly post, at least constantly post finished work, because that is incredibly exhausting. And if you don't enjoy the social media side of it as much as you enjoy the art side of it, it's going to be really hard to keep up with that pace. And you're going to start to either resent social media or get really burned out on the art side because you're just pumping out that work. And in my experience, the work needs a little bit of time. You're cooking, you're cooking. And when you're cooking, you got to get all the spices right, and you got to put it in the oven for the right amount of time. You just let it cook. See social media as a black hole sucking my soul away. Social and creative alike. Best thing I ever did was stop social media. And here's the thing. For some people, absolutely. Like, if you are aware enough that you're like, social media doesn't serve me, absolutely. But if you are an artist who's trying to, make it online, whether it's freelance, whether you're looking for a job, whether you are trying to create your own IP, sometimes having social media is a non-negotiable. And that means setting some boundaries with the platforms, as well as, making sure that you're happy with all of it and that it's not this like soul-sucking thing. With that being said, don't forget to develop your skills in marketing. Don't forget to understand psychology. Like, these are all, like, those are things that it's a separate skill from art. And I think so many people are quick to get demotivated because they feel like, oh, my art didn't get any likes, that means I'm a bad artist. Well, it might actually mean that you don't understand marketing, and that your art may be fantastic, but if you don't understand marketing, then either you need to get really lucky, or you need to get lucky. I don't know, because I think you really need to understand who your audience is, what you're bringing them, and why they even follow or buy or subscribe or whatever it is. Let's see. Very inspired by them. Recognize I'm kind of uncommon when it comes to my competitiveness. Not competitive anything else other than my art. So personally, I thrive off of that because that's just me. I've never felt discouraged by other artists on social media better than me. Always felt inspired, like you said. It sounds, see, I'm like a little on both sides here, because it sounds like, what do you do about it? Or how do you deal with this? So if it's not a negative thing for you, I think that's fine. In my mind, I think the competitive nature, I'm not sure. I'm not really sure how I feel about it. I guess I understand it. I don't know if it's something that fuels me. I think it's important to get comfortable with reposting old work too. That's something I struggle with. Oh my gosh, absolutely. Okay, so this is something that is not talked about enough, and I'm getting close here because we need to talk about this. So if you are someone who's been making art online for many, many years, and you've been trying to keep up with social media, you've been trying to like post all that you can, guys, repost your old work. There's nothing against reposting your old work. And when you do, actually, I talked about this in one of our group mentorship sessions a couple days ago, actually, where you can repost and then you can like think about, what's a new way of reposting it? Like, what's a different story that you can tell? Or what's a different thing that you can focus on in the caption? And this is something that people don't think about. It's just like, oh, here's an old piece of art that I did. And it's like, that's great, but how can you bring this alive again? How can you reshare the story in a different way? How can you get people hooked on the idea of whatever it is that you've made and pull them in again? Like for me, a lot of my illustrations, they were story-based and they had a story that I posted alongside them. But I very rarely like post the image with the same story. Like sometimes I will create a new caption or a new story, or even just a rework of what I've already posted. It's okay to do that, and I actually encourage you to be creative with what that reposting looks like, because it doesn't just need to be the same image or the same caption. And if y'all are worried about annoying people, or someone's already seen it, that's every reason to recreate something new around it. So don't be afraid to repost. I think Avis is onto something here. Repost your old work. You've put hours into that stuff. You put hours into that stuff, and it lives for 24 hours in a tweet. Okay, it needs more love. It needs more time. Any tips for advertising commissions? I feel like I never know how to do that. Usually what happens is I post my commission announcement, then I have no idea where else to go from there. So Moon, what I would do is this is my recommendation for all artists who have commissions. First of all, do you know what your demand is when it comes to commissions? And what I mean by this is when you open your commissions, do you have a set queue or a set list? And when you open them, how quickly or frequently is that queue filling up? And if you don't know the answer to this, I would highly recommend opening your commissions with a limited queue that's based on what you're able to do in a month span. The reason I say a month is because most people are, they have to, pay their bills every month. And so that's kind of a good time frame to figure out, okay, am I making enough money that I need to make in order to live? So in a month, if you were to open your queue, how many commissions can you do in a month and set that limit? So this is just like the starting point to figure out like what your demand is. And then when you open your commissions, I want you to think about why someone would commission you. What are they looking for? Is it a portrait? Is it a design? I don't know what you make. So I think this is going to be very personal to you, but the reason people would buy from you, get really specific about that. And then when you think about the potential customer that's going to buy that, I want you to write a social media post when your commissions go live. I want you to write to that person. So get into their mind, think about what they would want the commission for, and then write something convincing about what it is that you want to share with them. What problem, this sounds weird when we phrase it this way, but this is very like marketing-esque. What problem is your art going to solve for them? So I'll give you an example. I do a lot of D&D portraits. Fantasy portraits in general, like sometimes it's D&D, sometimes it's World of Warcraft or like other video games. But people generally want these types of portraits for their D&D games, right? So if we are talking to this particular type of person, what are they looking for? Why do they want the portraits? What kind of portraits do they want? How is this going to enhance their story? Think about all of the ways that having a portrait is going to benefit their D&D experience, and write the post that way. Make sure they know why they are buying, not just like, here is a portrait. Would you like a portrait? Make sure they know why they're buying. This is so important. And so when you know your demand and you know what they want, then based on your demand, you can also then calculate your pricing, which should be changing over time. I know this is kind of a tangent of what your question was. But if you have a really high demand, you have lots of people coming for your work, then you will also know that you're able to, fill your queue. And if you consistently fill your queue, you're going to also want to raise your prices. So to start, you want to know who you're selling to, why they would want it, and how is it going to benefit them. If I already made a commission post, is it okay to delete and make a new one? Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Have the post already, but it really does just amount to, hey, want a drawing. So, okay, here's my thing. So before you go and delete it, keep it just for visibility's sake, just so people know you're offering commissions. Here's what you do. I would keep it. And then for your next one, I don't know if you got commissions or if you're like working on something in between. For your next one, do a little bit of planning. Who do you want to serve? What problem is your art going to solve? What void are you trying to fill creatively for the people who come to you for art? And then your next post, whenever you decide to send that out, inject some of that brainstorming into it so that when you post, it's a little bit more than like, hey, I make art and I'm selling it. Because there's a lot of posts out there like that. There's a lot of people that are saying, I'm an artist. There's a big one. I'm a fantasy artist and I draw portraits. This is like a huge one, okay? And I want you guys to set yourself apart from these people. What more does your work offer? Does it get really specific? Is it a particular race of character that you draw really well? What are your skills? What sets you apart from everyone else? I want you to think about that. Like, spend a really good amount of time thinking about that, and then rewrite that commission post and then post it again later on. No one's going to be upset if you post it again, especially if you are already posting content in between. They're not going to worry so much, or they're not going to be bothered by it so much. Wasted 4 years of my life to reach a decent painting skill. Now I've lost all my clients, all my motivation. I have no idea what to do. It's so depressing. Most sad thing is I don't even understand why. Okay, let's talk about this. So LGN, I'm sure this is incredibly demoralizing for you to develop your skills, have some sort of success with it, and then to feel like you've lost your clients. So I think our first reaction there, and correct me on this, but I think our first reaction is probably there's something wrong with my art, or there's something wrong with me. And I think that thought is a very dangerous one, because it stops us from pursuing the potential of, like, maybe there's another approach I can take. Maybe there's something that I can learn. Maybe there's some other tactic that I can try. So if any of you are feeling this way or going through something like this, I want you to be very careful about the thoughts that come up when this happens, because it's going to kill your motivation, it's going to kill your joy for drawing, and it's going to make you question everything that you've done up until this point. And LGN, I'm so sorry that you're going through this, because this is hard to face, especially when you're trying to get back to it. And it's like, I used to do this, and at one point it was working, but like now it's not, and it feels like crap. So what I would do, LGN, if you can, maybe have a discussion with some of your old clients and just say, hey, no pressure, but like, what's the reason? And this might be kind of hard to do, but like, what's the reason for, do you still commission artists? Or like, no pressure to buy, but like, what are your thoughts on commissions? And that's a harder one, because you kind of have to, they may not be honest, or they may not tell you directly to your face, but that's a good place to start, because that's like, you're going from having nothing right now to here's an answer. The other side of it is you can kind of look at objectively what you're doing, and then you can strategize. You can say, okay, what was working, or what did I enjoy doing that felt like it was working? Hang on to that stuff. And then look at the potentials, maybe do some Googling, maybe ask some other artists in the industry too. Have you realized, like, have people stopped paying you? Have clients stopped coming for your work? Like, what has your experience been? And I think this will bring you to a space where you can recognize that, one, you may not be so alone, but on the other side of it, maybe it's the market. Maybe people don't have as much money right now. Maybe people aren't buying this particular thing. Get some feedback from other artists and see what's going on with them. And again, it's not going to feel so much on you when you do that. But then from there, even if you feel like everything that you're doing is working, like your skills are fine, which I would argue everybody can improve, like no matter where you're at. Even I am like, I'm not good enough, right? Like, I think we should all keep pushing. Even if you feel like everything's working out, ask yourself, is there anything that I can try or improve on that could benefit me? Whether it's your art, whether it's your marketing. Marketing is a gap that so many people have in their strategies. Is it the type of work that I make? Is it not clear what I make? Is it the social platform? Like, what's going on there? So I think there's a lot of things that we can look at outside of ourselves and just have an objective look. And I would start there. I know that it's really, really demotivating and depressing, but there's also the side of it where you have to love the art that you're making as well. And if you are feeling all of these negative feelings, it's going to be hard to sit down and enjoy art at all. So if you can, I would spend some time rebuilding that love for your art, because if it feels like nobody loves your art, and the only satisfaction of the art that you made was people loving your art, you have to rekindle some kind of relationship with it, even if that's you and your art getting to know each other again, or falling in love again. I know that sounds like really corny and cheesy, but I think that's an important foundation to have, especially when you're going through something like this. It's weird that we're always told that if we fail at something, it's our fault for not being good enough, even when it's objectively and definitely some outside fault, not just relating to art, but in general. It's so sad to see how we treat our mental health and how the mental health of others. You know, Blood, I agree. I think that here's the thing. There's a lot of things outside of ourselves that we cannot control. And hold on. What can I help you?
There's things outside yourself that you can't control. Is me giving you chocolate.
Oh, thank you. Wow, look at this chocolate delivery. Okay, I'm gonna eat this in a minute because it's gonna make my mouth go off. There's a lot of things outside of ourselves that we can't control. But when we begin to focus on the things that we can control, this empowers us. This isn't an example of like, oh, everything's your fault and you should fix it even though everyone else is against you. That's not what this is. I want all of you to think about focusing on the things that are within your control so that you can empower yourself to move forward from where you're at and not get stuck on what are all these bad things that are happening to me. I'm not saying that it's anyone's fault, but I think that it's much more empowering to think about what we can do for ourselves instead of thinking we are the victim in the situation. Whether or not that's true, continuing to think that or feel that, well, I think make space for that because that's a very difficult feeling to face. But know that you have the power to choose to focus on the things that you do have control over. It doesn't diminish the things that are affecting you, but it does empower you to make a difference in your life. Even if that difference is very small, it's a start. It's something. So if you're feeling that way, I'm so sorry that you're going through that, but know that you can shift that. You can focus on the things that you can control and give that your power. Don't let these things that you can't control steal your power, because worrying about things that you can't control and that you can't change, this is going to steal your energy. Just like I talked about in my recent video, focusing on things that, like over focusing on worries and fears, this is going to steal your energy. How did you personally deal with a bad mentality if you had one? And how did you improve your belief and improve your mindset? Oh, this is such a good question. So all of the things that I post about and that I share are all things that I've gone through. So I don't, whenever y'all like look at my situation and you think like, she's got to figure it out, like everything's easy for her. It's not. I've went through all the same things. And developing that, I think, requires self-reflection. It requires getting help with your mental health. It requires practicing working through these things, journaling. But honestly, so much of the stuff that I went through, I had to work through in order to keep going with my art. So for me, my art and sharing my art was so important to me that like having super anxious thoughts or doubting myself, these were things that I knew I wanted to work through, because if I didn't, there was going to be a moment in my journey where I wasn't able to share, I wasn't able to draw. And that can be a journey inward that's like very personal. That can be something that you work out with your therapist. That can be something that you discover with your peers. But I think being self-aware of how you're feeling, as well as what you want your life to look like instead. So if you are someone who's very anxious and like, let's say for example, like you're scared to share your work, it requires the bravery of saying, I'm terrified of this, and still doing it anyway, so that you can see that the other side of it may not be as bad as what you're feeling or you're afraid of. And that can be difficult to do on your own. So if you're doing that on your own and it's very hard, I'd recommend connecting with your peers, connecting with a therapist, connecting with a mentor, someone that can help you through it, because that was a difficult journey for me. A big part of that was alone, and I think I would have benefited much more from having someone to share that with and get help through that with. But I also have this like annoyingly positive side of things where it's like when I struggle, it's important to remind myself that there's an opportunity in that struggle. Even though the struggle sucks and I don't want to go through it, there's always something to learn. There's always something to grow from. And I think that if we can go into it with this stuff is really hard to deal with, but there's something to learn from this. I think it's much easier to navigate that versus, all those negative feelings existing or all those challenges existing and then feeling like, how am I going to overcome this? I can't do this. This is too much. This is hard. So embracing that there are going to be moments where things are going to be difficult, and then making the commitment to, even when they're difficult, to face them, but also be open-minded, and get to the root of like, why do I feel this way? And is this holding me back or is this helping me? And I actually kind of found that it was super helpful for me whenever I had a negative thought about my art, or my creativity, to actually sit with it and think, how can I make this positive, or how can I see this in a positive light and learn from it? And the funny thing is, like, so many of my tweets years ago about like creative motivation and working through this stuff came from my struggle. It was like I sat with it for a while and was like, what can I learn from this? Or what am I learning from this? And then I wrote the tweets. And then it was like, the more I wrote the tweets about my struggles, I the more I felt like I could work through it, or I had been working through it. When you re-upload your art, do you necessarily need to say that it's old art? Absolutely not. Moon, if you repost it and you don't want anyone to know that, and let's be honest, a lot of people won't, because social media isn't going to show, it's not going to constantly show your stuff to the same people. So the people who are seeing it, they might not have even seen it before. I've had people who have, they've commented on my work from like 4 years ago, and they're like, this is such a beautiful piece, this is one of my favorites. And I'm like, this is old. They've never seen it. They've never seen it before. So you don't need to say, hey, this is a repost, or hey, this is old art. Just post it. Post it with some new content, a new caption, introduce it in a new way, and nobody's going to question it. And here's the thing, the people who are really avid fans of your work, they're going to see that. And if they've seen it before, they're going to be like, I still love that piece. So yeah. Our question. So you touched on the topic of don't get competitive with your art. What does that mean? So I think we talked about this a little earlier. And I think that this competitive nature of like, I'm going to be better than my peers, or like I have to keep up with my peers, or like I need to get ahead of my peers. I think that's kind of what we touched on. And I think that mindset is a little detrimental to our growth as artists, because it sort of positions the artists around us as someone who's against us. And the art journey is already isolated as it is. We're all very, I'm using this term loosely, but we're all very lonely, right? Like, we're all little shrimps in our rooms or basements or whatever. I'm being very dramatic here, but like, we're all on our own journey here. And so when we see other artists as competition, I think that this creates an unhealthy dynamic between ourselves and our peers. And because we're all lonely creatives, I think that if you let this mindset get to you, it can really isolate you further. And I think that we need that connection. We need that connection in our creativity, because so much of what we do is, we're alone. We're alone in it. You're right, Frey. We need to form fellowships, art fellowships. Hey, honey. Hello. Yeah, I think a lot of us are lonely. I think a lot of us creatives are lonely. And I think that COVID didn't help this, but I think that it's even more important now to make that connection with your peers. Question to you all. Do you do things that give you more dopamine than art? Oh, Silex, this is such a good question. Okay, I've been all over talking about dopamine on social media, and I'm like totally against doom scrolling. I'm totally against like avoiding the things that, not even that we should be doing, but the things we want to be doing, in favor of these very quick dopamine giving activities like scrolling social media. And I think that, especially for my tired artists here and my busy artists, I know there's a lot of you in chat. So many of the people I talk to, they have day jobs, they have responsibilities, they have kids, they have families. We all have this stuff, right? In some capacity. And sometimes at the end of the day, you're just exhausted. You would rather watch TV or scroll Twitter or TikTok or whatever it is because you're exhausted. Like your brain is like, I'm checked out. I'm done. But the thing is, when you do when you, when you do that consistently, you're getting dopamine hit after dopamine hit, okay? And when this happens, this is why it's bad. And maybe monitoring it instead of just completely cutting it out is fine. But being aware of this, when you do that and you get this dopamine hit after dopamine hit, it is incredibly hard to focus and it's incredibly hard to stay motivated because dopamine is directly correlated with your motivation. So if you are on social media getting dopamine hit after dopamine hit, your motivation is going to go down. None. Worse when you do this first thing in the morning. And I'm not going to chastise anybody because, like, I have my moments, right? But when you do this first thing in the morning, it's so difficult to garner the motivation to get up. You're then also scrolling on social media and you have this laundry list of things that you need to keep up with. And then you have to do your art. What do you think is going to get done? Not your art. The priorities, maybe, because you have to do those, but then art very quickly turns into this thing that you just put off. And so if you're having a hard time getting started, this is a huge one. If you're having a hard time getting started, if you're having a hard time staying focused, or you're having a hard time staying motivated, I recommend that you monitor your social media usage, whether that's Twitter, whether that's Instagram, whether that's scrolling on TikTok, whether that's scrolling on Pinterest. I'm so sorry to tell you this. Even scrolling on Pinterest, it's going to give you the same dopamine hit as scrolling on social media. So if you can monitor that, I would give yourself maybe like a week or two, then you will replenish your dopamine, especially if you are spending periods of time doing difficult things. So like all the things you don't want to do first thing in the morning, if you get up and do those first, you're going to have much more dopamine throughout the day. But there's things that actually recharge your dopamine. So if you go for a walk, if you meditate, if you exercise, even just like eating right and getting enough sleep, these are incredibly beneficial for your dopamine. So if you're not doing these things, I highly recommend that you start because you're kind of getting in your own way if you don't eat right, get sleep, sunshine, exercise, all that stuff. But if you do all those things, avoid social media, and when you sit down to draw, and I talked about this in one of my recent videos, after 15 minutes, okay, bear with me, 15 minutes. We can all do something for 15 minutes, right? I know you can, chat. I know you can. You've been here for how long? How long have you been streaming?
1 hour later.
You can do something for 15 minutes. So if you're thinking, oh my God, I don't want to draw. Oh my God, it's too hard. I don't want to draw. It's going to take me too long. Oh, what if I mess it up? And I know y'all have had these thoughts. If instead you think about those things and take action, after 15 minutes, the difficult task, insert drawing, after 15 minutes, your brain's going to make dopamine. It's going to make dopamine. And do you know what that means? It's going to positively impact your ability to focus because drawing is hard and your brain knows that. And so when you sit down to draw, your brain's going to make dopamine so that you can focus on the drawing. Okay? It's not the other way around. So you can't sit there and think, oh, I'm just going to wait until I feel motivated. Once I feel motivated, I'm going to do the thing. I'm going to draw. You have to take action and then your brain will make dopamine. And here's the beautiful thing. It's so good. Okay? The moment you sit down and you start drawing, all of the agonizing that happens before you draw, it's gone. It goes away. The moment you start, that agonizing goes away and then dopamine begins to generate. And so I know I've talked to so many artists about this, but so many artists, they're thinking about drawing more than they're drawing. And that's stealing your energy. It's stealing your energy. It's stealing your time. It's stealing your motivation to make art. So if you can close the gap between when you start drawing And the moment you think about drawing, you're going to save all that energy. You're going to save all that creative energy for drawing. And then 15 minutes in, your brain is like, hell yeah, we got this. Let's go. Dopamine, here we go. It's so crazy because so many people don't know this. So many people think that like they've got to muster the motivation or they have to wait for the motivation, and you just have to start. When you start, you stop agonizing, your brain starts making dopamine because the task is hard. Procrastinating because you're afraid of messing up your art is so real. It is. It's a real thing. Oh my gosh, there's so many. I've worked with so many students, you guys. I did the calculations actually. I'm working on a whole bunch of stuff, and I was just doing the calculations of how many hours I spent working with students this year. I spent thousands of hours just this year working with students, and so many of them struggled with the fear of drawing the wrong thing or the fear of incorrectly drawing something. And it's such a huge fear. It's one of those things that's like, as a teacher, I'd like to be able to be like, no, just move on, just get through it. But it's not. You have to work through it. You have to spend that time drawing, reflecting, seeing the outcome in order to reinforce that behavior. But like, it really is something that a lot of people are afraid of, just messing up. And I think that it's probably a product of our education system, where it's like, if you get a failing grade, then you don't pass your curriculum, you don't pass your class, and then you have to redo it all over. And so, not only that, but when you fail or you mess up, you're chastised as well. You get in trouble. And in art, let's be honest, in the real world in general, you have to make mistakes in order to improve or iterate or grow. And it's just very backwards the way that we are taught in a traditional education setting. So it's hard to break free from that. And a lot of the students that I've spoken with really struggle with that. And I think one of the reasons that I'm sure there was a point where I struggled with that as well, but I think I very quickly broke through it when I was young because I was a very stubborn child. I was the kid that was like, my parents would tell me to do something and I'd be like, why? 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 And so because I was always asking why, I was always challenging that. And so mistakes to me were like, if someone were to tell me like, oh, you're doing it wrong, I'd be like, well, prove it, or like show me why it's wrong. And I learned that I got more out of like messing things up than I did following the rules. Maybe I was a bad kid, I don't know. But I was always like asking the whys and challenging what everyone else was doing. Do I need to have a YouTube and Twitch to be a successful indie artist? I've thought about beefing up my YouTube more, but man, does it take time away from art. So I don't think so. I think that there are many avenues to explore. But, even if you have a YouTube or even if you have a Twitch, you still have to have some understanding of marketing, providing value for people, like who your audience is. To be honest, if you're going to be an indie artist or a freelance artist and you're not going to work for a studio or you're going to try to make it on your own, I think you have to have some understanding of marketing, or you just need to be the biggest social butterfly that ever existed, because the more people you know, the easier it's going to be. But if you don't understand marketing and you're not a social person, making it with your art is going to be incredibly difficult. I will be honest with you. I feel like those things are a necessity if you are on social media trying to make it with your work. Like if that's all you're doing, if you are just trying to like start your own IP or get people hyped about your stuff, you have to understand marketing. Even if you're a content creator, even if you do YouTube, you still have to understand this stuff. So it depends on what you want your lifestyle to look like. But I think that YouTube or streaming, these are unique opportunities to teach people and to share your experience with people. And so I think this is why many artists find success on these platforms. The connection to, this is like part of why people come here, is to connect with creators. But I don't think you necessarily need these things. I do think you need to understand marketing and psychology, which again, it's its own skill. Get scared of posting art sometimes because I'm afraid I will notice some major mistakes at the last minute. Moon, even if you do, here's what you do. Are you ready for this? Write this down. If you post your work, and this is so common, if you post your work and you see mistakes after you post it, don't panic, okay? Even if anyone else is even going to notice it, that's the first thing. We don't even know if anyone else is going to notice it. If they do, doesn't matter. This is your work. You're developing your skills, you're sharing your work, you're advocating for yourself. This is incredibly important. What you're going to do at this point is if you post it and you notice these mistakes, you write them down. No panicking, okay? This is a good thing. You write these things down, and then in your next project, you focus on one of those things specifically. And then when you post this new piece of art or whatever you're working on, that's not something that's holding you back anymore. And then you can make another list of, what's something that you're struggling with, or what's something that you notice after the fact. And then you don't have this scramble of, oh my gosh, I posted this work, I noticed something that I messed up on, now I have to delete it. No, stop right there. The moment that you think I have to delete it, I need you to stop. That's when you go, okay, I'm going to write this down and I'm going to work on this in my next piece. I'm so rusty, don't remember the basics. I tried to draw the way I used to, don't even remember simple anatomy. So BM, let me ask you this. Are you returning to art after a long break, or have you been consistently making art and you still feel like you're not able to remember the basics? So BM says they're returning to art after a long break. Okay, so I want to talk about this. This is another thing that I talk about with my students. When you are returning from art, it's going to take you a little bit of time to redevelop those skills. Not that you don't remember them, but the expectation is a little too high to come back and think that your skills are just going to still be as sharp as they were. And here's the thing, they might be, but you need to give yourself some time of practicing, reintroducing these concepts, refreshing, bringing these things forward to your, conscious mind. And I think if you give it that time, this depends on how long it's been since the last time you were drawing, but if it's been like 10 years since you were drawing, you're going to need to give it a little bit more time than if you took like a month off of drawing. So keep that in mind as you're returning. How long has it been? Where were you at before? And have you realistically given yourself time to refresh those concepts? Because even though we were able to do it once before in our creative journeys, it doesn't mean that we can just jump back in and everything's going to be the same. Look at it like this. I'm sure there's many people in chat who exercise. If you were a runner that went out and ran 5 miles every single day, and then you stopped running for 10 years, and then you started running again 10 years later, chances are you may remember what it feels like to run, or like how to run properly, but you may not have the same capacity in your lungs, in your heart, to be able to do the same thing. So depending on how long it's taken, remember that it's going to take you time to get back to that point. As a runner, I appreciate the comparison. Yeah. So before I was an artist, I worked professionally as a personal trainer as well. So I find that comparing the two, like, it feels very similar to me. Like, my experience in the gym was very similar to my experience in art. In my most successful year with art, because of networking and simply connecting with people, don't know if it's connecting with marketing. I think so there's many avenues that you can explore with marketing, but I think that social connection is part of it. The hard part about connecting in like a one-on-one sense is that it's very hard to scale. So if you were to, if your goal was to grow your platform larger to maybe be able to sell like a higher volume of prints or products or something like that, it's very hard to scale that when you're kind of connecting with people. But that is a really good start. That is like, I feel like that's the start of doing something like that. So I think, Bella, you're on the right track. I would keep studying marketing and psychology, because those two things go hand in hand. And think about scalability as you move forward. Are there free or low-cost websites or tools that will help with relearning? Absolutely. Okay, so YouTube is a huge resource. Highly recommend, like, if you Google anything you're trying to learn on YouTube, chances are you're going to find it. For drawing specifically, I would actually recommend revisiting or visiting for the first time Drawbox. Drawbox is fantastic. It's very beginner friendly. It's very like balanced between learning and having fun. And I think that I would say go check out Drawbox if you're having a hard time getting started, because it's very like low stakes, low expectations, but it builds up very fundamental skills that help with drawing. Question. So I had learned recently in uni about the struggles for motivation, and one of the topics that came up with this was the struggle of perfection. Ooh, let's dig in. Worrying about making something perfect traps us from creating works of art. What are some advice to help stop the idea that everything has to be perfect? It's something I struggle with and slowly break the habit during the semester. Great question. This is a really tough one. And I think, social media doesn't help this, because what we see on social media is a highlight reel of amazing things. And so it sets this expectation really high. And I think one of the best ways to work through, well, with perfection, a lot of times what it does is it stops us from beginning at all or trying at all, because there's this idea of it has to be perfect. But in our mind, if we can't make it perfect, what's the point, right? So, and I'm actually working on this with one of my students at the moment too, and she's been doing so well working through this. So one of the best ways to approach this, even though it's incredibly uncomfortable when it feels like we can't meet those expectations, it's to change the thing we focus on from the outcome to what it is we're doing that's going to lead us to whatever our goals are. So for example, I think most people, when they draw, they think about, I'm going to make a beautiful piece of art and I'm going to share it on social media. And the difficult thing here is that there is a very set expectation that like something's going to happen, and if it doesn't, we feel very much like a failure, or like we didn't meet our goals. So I think instead it's really important to focus on what it is we're doing to get to that point. So for example, let's say that our goals are, we want to be an artist who is growing their skills, developing their portfolio, and they want to eventually send their portfolio off to whoever, right? So they may be looking at it like, this piece needs to be portfolio worthy, right? But I think the goal should be, what can I do to improve my work? Or what am I doing today to improve my work? Am I consistently showing up and making work? And am I getting the feedback necessary to make sure that my work is portfolio ready? These are actionable things that if you were to do them in a day, you could actually check them off a list and be like, yep, doing what I need to do to build my portfolio. But if instead you look at it like, the portfolio needs to look exactly like this, and if I don't produce this work at a certain time, I am a failure. The problem with that is you're focused on an outcome that may not present itself for a very long time. And so it affects your motivation negatively, because you're waiting for that moment. And sometimes we're waiting for that moment for a long time. But if you're doing the things to foster a strong portfolio, to develop your skills, to advocate for yourself, to be learning and getting feedback, these are all things that are going to positively benefit your portfolio down the line. So try to focus on what your goals are, and then the actions that you can take to bring you to those goals, and not on a day-to-day basis think, I have to do this right every single day. And I think this will help a lot with the perfectionism, because the expectation will be a little bit different, and it won't be geared so much on this like performative outcome, but rather cultivating the skills necessary to reach the goals that you want to achieve. How do you balance marketing yourself and your daily life? I would love to socialize more, but I have so much other stuff taking up my time, so I feel like I don't have as much time to market myself as I would like. Moon, you are just fantastic with the questions today. I love this question. So and I'm an incredibly busy person too. So I would say the core of my work is my art, but so much of what I do is kind of a bunch of other things, right? Whether it's admin work, or it's teaching, or it's posting on YouTube, or it's doing a live stream. Like, there's a lot of things I'm balancing. So what I would do, if you're not already doing this, is keep a calendar. Know how you're going to spend your time at all times, whether it's vegging out on the couch, or it's working hard on your art. Know how you're going to spend that time. And this is actually what I do, and I just want to put this into perspective because I think a lot of people assume that the marketing side of it has to take a long time. I spend about, this depends on how much content I have at the moment, but I usually always have content prepared ahead. But I spend about an hour a day keeping up with my social media. So that is scheduling my posts, preparing my posts, writing my posts, and sending my posts. And like here and there in between, I'm commenting. I don't really like count that as time, but I spend an hour a day doing that. And so I think this is where a lot of people struggle, is they try to do all of this like back and forth, like all throughout their day. I would dedicate that hour, make a list of the things that you need to be doing to keep up with it, and then in that hour only spend that time keeping up with that stuff. Now that and I know that like there's going to be some build up to get you to the point where like an hour is a sustainable amount of time, so it might be a little bit more to start, but dedicate that time specifically to the marketing so that you can do what you need to do for the marketing in order to build that system that works. And so right now, if you feel like the marketing side of it is kind of not as strong, maybe what you do with that hour is you research marketing. What are marketing tactics? What are best practices? You know, what is marketing even? Like, don't be afraid to search things like that to feel really confident in what it is that you're doing. But dedicate that time once a day. And then over time, you're going to develop a system that works for your content. And for me, that hour is enough to post 3 posts on Twitter, Blue Sky, Kara. Well, Kara a little less because I've just been like leaning away from it a bit. 3 posts a day on those platforms. So I'm reusing content, I'm rewriting content, I'm writing new content, an hour a day. That's what I spend on it. Again, if you don't feel confident with the marketing, that hour a day is going to encapsulate research. It's going to be practice time. Just because it's something that you want to be doing or you feel you need to be doing for your work doesn't mean that on day one you show up and you're doing the same thing that I'm doing. This has taken me time to cultivate and learn and build. And so use that hour in a way that is in alignment with where you're at. I think that's the most important thing. But it all boils down to planning that time to make sure that no matter what, you end up taking that time to improve it, to do it, to schedule it, whatever that looks like. But please be kind to yourself, because I've been posting on social media for nearly 10 years. I have literally thousands of posts that I can either rewrite, reuse. Like this, it's gonna look a little bit different for me than it will for you if this is something that you're just now like either starting, learning more about, or getting comfortable doing. Question regarding marketing. How useful are those Discord channels on other people's servers that are dedicated to sharing your own art? I have opinions here. On the one hand, depending on the type of server, these channels can be very useful, depending on what you're trying to do. If it is an art server or an artist-owned server, and you are posting your art in there, well, first, I want you to ask yourself what your goals are with art. So if your goals are to find work or to find people that resonate with your work, actually, let's separate those two things, because like people can like your work, but they may not be buying your work. So if your goal is to find jobs or paid work, what happens if you go into an art server where everyone is trying to do the same thing? This would be a representative from McDonald's walking into Burger King and saying, hey, we have cheeseburgers over there. They're already in a place where there's cheeseburgers. Why would they leave? On the other hand, if you're in a Discord that isn't art-centric and you are positioning yourself as an artist in that space, that could be wildly beneficial. However, there's kind of this balance where if you're just like self-promoting, I feel like it can feel kind of icky in those spaces. But if it's organic, if you're like part of, I don't know, part of a fandom or part of like that creative space where you're making work that like people, they're going to show up to look at, like if you're drawing their favorite character or whatever, that's a little different. There's a good chance people might want to see more of that from you. And so in that space, it makes a lot of sense. But if you're in an art server and everyone's posting art and you're posting your art looking for work, that's going to be really, really hard to find work. So I wouldn't spend time just kind of dropping your work in all these artist servers because I mean, unless there's something specific you're looking for. Like, let's say you're looking for feedback from artists, that's a beautiful place to post your work. But if you're looking for work, not a great place. Usually everybody in there is looking for work. Or if not everybody, a lot of people. So in terms of marketing, if you're going to do it that way, Blood, I would go into a space where there are not other artists or there are far less artists looking for, you know, sharing that kind of thing or looking for work. I have a question, which is more about motivation. I have a lot of trouble with my motivation and I end up not doing a lot in both art and college. It affected myself and gets even less motivated. I also kind of get upset with myself because of my own behavior, but I can't do a thing without being motivated. Do you get this type of problem? So this is, we talked about this a little bit earlier. I think that waiting for motivation to show up is a losing game because in order to get motivated, our brain has to create dopamine. And the paradoxical thing is when you get started, that's the moment your brain creates dopamine because it recognizes, here's a difficult task. We've got to get them through it. Time to create dopamine. Okay. And of course, there's going to be moments where that motivation comes on its own. But if we rely on that, it's kind of like inspiration. If we rely on that, we never know when that's going to show up or when that's going to happen. So it's very important to know that our brain will create dopamine when we show up and we do the thing. The hard part, Non, is that you have to show up and it's going to take about 15 minutes before you get into the flow, before that dopamine is going to help you at all. So if you're having a hard time getting started, it is literally just a just do it moment. When you do it, it's going to create dopamine. Motivation is going to show up. I think here, one of the important things is to not get upset with yourself for not feeling motivated. This is, I mean, I have a motivation video. I'm going to share it again because I feel like it's going to be incredibly helpful. But I have a video about motivation. There's a lot of things that you can kind of work on with this. Dopamine is just one of the things. But there's, you know, developing your reason for doing it, the purpose behind it, the why, getting clear about that, being kind to yourself, being compassionate with yourself. These are all necessary things in order to cultivate that motivation over and over. And then also, you know, reflecting on your experience so that you can then again show up even when you don't feel motivated. All of these things are very, very important. So, Non, I dropped the YouTube video there for you. I highly recommend checking that out. I just made that about a month ago. I think that will really help you. Always better after start drawing, but I agonize beforehand. Yeah, Brett, if you can close that gap between the agonizing and starting, you're going to save yourself a whole lot of energy. Big time. Try to make it a choice between being bored or making art. Yeah, make it. If you make, there's the other thing. If just getting started is just out of the cards, we talked about the chair method in my video. Do we need to talk about the chair method here? Because I will talk about it. Basically, if you have a hard time getting started, there's another option, and it is make yourself as bored as you possibly can, because that is more agonizing for your brain than doing anything else. So in my motivation video, I talk about getting an incredibly uncomfortable chair, move it to the center of a room, whatever room it is, you know, wherever you can't access like no TV, no YouTube, no scrolling, just take an uncomfortable chair, put it in the center of the room, sit in that chair for 15 minutes. And I guarantee you at the end of that 15 minutes, you're going to get up and you're going to want to draw, because that's going to be so much more agonizing than just drawing. Like you'll realize, oh yeah, I actually do want to draw. No, not 50. I'm sorry, Doki. 15. 1, 5. 1, 5. Imagine me being like, yeah, go sit in timeout for an hour, sir. No, you're good. You're good. I just didn't want to mislead you there. It's crazy stuff. Our brain, I feel like our brain, it's on our side, but because we don't necessarily understand it fully, it can feel like it's our enemy. When I look back at moments where motivation or inspiration just showed up, it was a situation where a random cat meowed at me, walking somewhere, some flowers smelling nice, an outfit that just happened to look nice, random things. The real work there is partially how to make use of those little pieces of inspiration and motivation and being ready to just grab your phone or iPad and doodle something. So, I mean, I think I agree with you here. I think the hard part is that because we can't anticipate those moments, when they do show up, sometimes it's kind of inconvenient. So much of life has like inconvenient moments. So if you can capitalize on those moments, I think that's great. But honestly, most of the time it's a matter of sitting down even when you don't feel particularly motivated, or maybe you don't even want to do it. Here's the other funny thing. So I'll give you an example of this. So like I said, I'm moving in December, and there's a lot of, when you're renting, I mean, even when you buy, there's a lot of things that you kind of have to check off your list to be able to get into the new place. And of course, there was a checklist that I had that I needed to do in order to get into my place. And it was something, I mean, I was ahead of time on setting all this stuff up. You know, it was a few months at the time before I was moving out. So I was like, I'll just wait to do it. Like, it's okay. And the longer that I waited to do it, the harder it became. But then the funny thing was my brain started doing this thing where it was like, oh, this is going to take so long. Oh, you've got to read the whole lease. Oh, you've got to sign the lease, as if like that's difficult. It's not. I just need to read the lease. But my brain did this thing where it was like all of this whole list of things suddenly became this huge list of things. And I think I put it off for like 3 weeks. When I finally sat down to do it, do you know how long it took me to, from top to bottom, the whole checklist? Took me an hour. It took me 1 hour to do all this stuff. And I literally, for 3 weeks, was like, oh, it's going to take me the whole day. Like, I have to work. I can't believe I have to do this. It took me an hour. And the hard part for me was that I kept telling myself, after work, I'll do it. It'll be fine, just after work. But after work, I was so exhausted. So finally, one day, I was just like, I'm going to do this first thing in the morning. I'm going to get up. I'm going to get it done. It took me an hour. So let this be a lesson that even when we want to do something, we have these expectations about how long it's going to take, what it's going to look like. But in actuality, and this is why reflection is really important, it will not take as long as we think it will. And it will not be as hard as we think it will. And the more that we kind of wait and agonize, it's going to build up this idea that this thing we're about to tackle is like the hardest, most frustrating thing that we're going to do. Just do it. If you do it, you'll realize it's not going to take as long as you think it is. And even if it does, it's probably not going to be as bad as you think it is. The same applies whether you are, like me, you have a checklist for moving, or it's drawing, or whatever it is. But reflect after the fact and ask yourself, was this as hard as I thought it was going to be? And what was it actually like? Was it easier? Was it harder? Was it fun? I didn't particularly find my moving checklist to be fun, but maybe some people do. Question, do you need to spend dedicated time for every skill, like line art, coloring, shading, or can you just focus on what feels good and comfortable for you, even if it means ignoring the other skills? Okay, so I'm gonna say if everything feels comfortable, or if you're only leaning into the comfortable, you're gonna want to get out of that space. Here's my motto. So comfort zone is for sustainability, and the difficult tasks are for growth. So they are both important to some degree, but if you are always comfortable or you are always uncomfortable, there's going to be problems on both sides. Burnout's going to happen if you're always uncomfortable, and stagnation is going to happen if you're always comfortable. So if you want to develop something, this is where some self-awareness comes in. You need to be, in your work, when you stumble upon challenges, you need to write those things down, become aware of them, and then spend dedicated time to develop them. Doesn't mean spending all of your time like doing tutorials or like in, you know, a study loop or anything like that. Just be aware of what needs work and spend part of your time drawing, studying that thing. And I think if you're in a space where you are spending about 50% of the time drawing fun things or comfy things, and then 50% of the time studying, this is a good place to be. But if you're on the verge of burnout, I would aim more towards 70% fun things and 30% studying. And if you are more in the comfort, I would find somewhere kind of in the middle ground where it's like 50-50, because you need those challenges to grow. And when you recognize them, I think it's important to lean into them. What's the science behind the blank canvas fear going away when you keep drawing every day? Or even starting but drawing doesn't feel as scary. Ideas just flow like nothing. So I can't say that I know like the science behind it, but what I do know is that when you face the blank canvas every day, you're going to be constantly exposed to it, which means the fear that sits behind the blank canvas is going to become less and less as you face it every day. So not only is that fear going to go down, but if you can show up to the blank canvas every day, draw something that satisfies you, or even just showing up, like the ability to show up, you're going to recognize your capability as an artist. You're going to say, even when I'm scared, I know I can show up. Or even when it's difficult, I know I can show up. And this is actually what builds confidence. Not the fact that like you're the greatest artist in the world and like you can do anything all the time. It's the fact that you know that you're capable, that when life is challenging or when something is uncertain, you're able to face it and you trust yourself to work through that challenge. So this is where confidence is born. So the more you expose yourself to the thing that scares you, the less it scares you. It's going to become easier to face it because the more you face it, the more you can anticipate what's going to happen. You can anticipate how you're going to handle it. But all of these things seem scarier if you continue to avoid it. Once saw an oil painter say something to the effect of, if you're afraid of a blank canvas, make it not blank. Just did a rough underpainting, quick, no detail. I love that. I think, yeah, if you find it intimidating, throw some brush strokes down on the, whether if you're working digital or you're working traditional, just make some marks on the canvas so that it's not blank. And that is in the same vein as just getting started. You're just doing it. I know in the moment when artists say things like just do it or like just try it, it can feel kind of demoralizing, but there really is, it is just about doing it. It's about doing it and seeing that the outcome isn't as bad as you think it's going to be, or it's totally different than you thought it was going to be. And then reflecting on how that went. Because if you go do something and then you don't spend that time recognizing how different it was from your expectations or how much better it was from your expectations, it's going to be really hard to keep doing that thing. But if you reflect on it and you spend that time thinking about it, it's going to reinforce that behavior. Do I have industry experience? How would one start a studio? So here's the thing. I don't have industry experience. Everything I've done has been, I've built it myself. So I run my own business. But because of that, I know that running a studio is very different than being a creative. So like even more, the marketing side of it is very important. But understanding business and being an artist, I think they have their crossovers and their similarities, but totally different skill set. So if you want to start a studio, I would do some research. It's more in alignment, like running a studio is more like seeing people's strengths, being able to fill gaps in what's necessary to build something bigger, like a game or a movie or whatever. And starting your own studio requires you to not only see that vision in others, but understand how that works yourself so that you can then take people, put them in the places that can make that happen. And that requires a lot of experience. If you didn't want to be the one to have experience in that, you would have to have the capital to be able to then hire someone to understand that and then start the studio. So there's a lot that goes into that. That's a big thing to think about. So more like running a ship, not necessarily rowing it. Yeah, it's kind of like that. I think that the experience rowing it, so to speak, can help. Because in order to identify what you'll need and the types of people that you need, I think that you need to understand the roles that need to be filled, or maybe have more of that experience. I look at a studio with more of a business mindset than like I'm an artist who's going to do a thing. That's not to say that artists can't do that. I just think there's like a lot of layers to that. Do you need to leave a note on social media when you go on a hiatus? I don't think so. I think unless you have people who are expecting work from you, I mean, contact those people. If you're going on a hiatus, just take your hiatus. Don't apologize for going. Don't explain yourself. I think that stuff like that it's tough to say like what your community thinks of that, but I think if you're constantly apologizing or constantly explaining yourself, it hurts your confidence, but I also think it hurts other people's confidence in you. Someone who's confident in their work doesn't feel like they have to explain themselves. And so, not that you're not confident in your work, but I think that by talking about it in that way, it gives that impression. My partner's feeling motivated to hang our respective works on our walls at home, and I realize I have basically nothing to contribute while they have tons. I felt really embarrassed for no real reason other than my ingrained desire to perform as an artist. I'm sorry that you feel that way. It's probably difficult to be sharing a space with someone who, you know, has a lot of work like that to put up. I guess when you think about putting your work up beside theirs, what comes up with that? Do you feel some particular emotion? Is there like a voice in your head that says something to you? What does that feel like, you know, not having that work to put up next to theirs? Keep thinking it's not good enough or finished enough. I feel like leaning into the idea of what if it's not good enough and what if that's okay? Not to validate that idea, because I don't think that that's true, and I wouldn't be able, I have no opinion on it because I don't know your work. But if you don't resist the idea of, is it not good enough? What if you just lean into it and say it's not good enough and you hang it anyway? I think there's an interesting exploration there, like, you know, seeing what happens when you go against that feeling or you don't let that feeling stop you. And I actually think that if you were to hang it anyway, you might feel kind of proud. You might have that connection with it. Like Frey said, where when you hang it, you realize like this is something that's close to you and you feel proud of, and it's a great experience. But in your mind, I think it's much easier to think about it in this like very negative way, and like what happens if it's not good enough? What happens if I do it? Like, even if it's not good enough, hang it. Be proud of it. Feel something for it. Even if you're like, ugh, feel it and experience that and see what comes from that. I think that's really important. In the times of social media being so prominent for many creators, there would be some websites shut down entirely, or there's a mass exodus of users leaving a site. What helps bring the audience to our portfolio website? Oh, this is such a solid question. So, with this being mentioned, I think Twitter is a really good example of this, and I feel the pain of this because Twitter was my biggest platform. So to avoid the struggles that we feel when a platform shuts down or when a lot of people leave, I think it is incredibly important to build some kind of email list or something that you own, so that you're able to, if you lose a platform, you lose your followers on a platform, or you leave a platform, you still have those people where you can send your content to, you can reintroduce them to a new platform, you can promo your stuff. And, you know, you can use, there's a lot of platforms out there like Klaviyo, MailerLite, MailChimp. All of these are really useful for creating mailing lists. And the great thing about the mailing list is, I mean, some of them are free. The ones that are paid are usually for larger lists, but that list is yours, and people are constantly using email. And if you have an email list, you are not at the behest of these platforms that can just disappear overnight or feel like they're crashing down. Not to say that Twitter is like completely ended and over, but the reach on Twitter definitely has changed for artists, at least from what I've experienced. So, yeah, I mean, it's a good question. It's a good thing to be thinking about. So, have a link to an email list or something on your websites, on your card pages, and frequently mention it on your social platforms so that the people who are very avid fans of yours can join this email list and you can contact them on a regular basis when you are selling commissions, when you're offering prints, things like that. There is a lot of nuance to running an email list and hosting an email list and like best practices and things like that. So I hate to be like the person that's like, oh, you know, study another thing, but email list is another form of marketing, and I think understanding best practices and how to use it is pretty important too. So it might be something that you spend, you know, your hour a day doing social media stuff or learning. It's very important to have one of those. I also have one of them, and I wish I had one sooner. I will be honest, but I have one too. But even if you move to another platform and things are working well, know that at any time that platform can, yeah, it's kind of scary to think about. And as someone who has a very large following on Twitter and things have really changed on Twitter, I feel the pain. And I'm sure a lot of people have also felt the pain too. So know that like these followings, we don't own these. These belong to the platform. So you know, how you keep track of that stuff is up to you, but I think having an avenue where someone can't just snatch it away from you is really important. Email list. Start an email list. Blue Sky's been great though. I will say I very much enjoy Blue Sky. I'm on Blue Sky if you guys don't already follow me. I'm still posting on Twitter. I'm posting pretty much the same stuff that I am on Twitter on Blue Sky. So if you follow on both, you're probably going to see both. Assuming Twitter shows you my content. I don't even know anymore if that's a thing. But Blue Sky will. Blue Sky engagement is like insanely far better than Twitter at the moment. And I don't even think it's like a matter of like the type of content. I just think Twitter is doing a thing. I don't even know. I really don't. Because like a few days ago, one of my posts on Twitter went viral, and then today I got 25 likes. So I have no idea how to gauge it. And I'm over here like, yeah, I understand marketing. This makes sense. And then I'm like, I just don't know what's going on. Final boss of marketing is trying to figure out Twitter algo. I don't even know. I don't understand the Twitter algorithm at all at this point. I don't even know if there is one. I think the artists are just like shunned. I think a lot of people are shunned. But I feel like the things I'm seeing on my main page, I'm like, I don't want to see this. I don't even know why I'm seeing it. It's just like memes and like LinkedIn nonsense. I heard so many sites that died down. I had Inkblot, didn't find many people to use it. Also, as a comic artist, I found that so many comic creators are leaving webtoons. Little tricky as a comic artist to find what's best in the long run. Making my own website is great, and thank you so much for suggesting mailing lists. I'll look into those. Luna, I think it sounds like you've been sort of afflicted by what's been going on with all these different platforms, and I'm sure you're feeling exhausted. I think that the artists who keep going through all of this are incredibly strong. It's hard. It's hard. But I think having a mailing list will make it a little easier if something does go wrong in these other platforms, or if, you know, there's a grand exodus again and people leave a platform. So at least at the very least, you're kind of cultivating this community within an email list, and then you're able to, you know, tap into that if a platform were to go down, or you could redirect people. Marketing has a lot of variables. Posting times can play into it too. So I agree with this. However, I don't think posting time is as important as understanding marketing and your audience. And like, I feel like knowing the best time to post is kind of like, it's part of gamifying social media. So like it is one piece of the puzzle, but I feel like it's a very small minor piece, and it has more to do with like how you connect with people, what your message is, how you're solving problems, how you're bringing value, and again, who your audience is. I think what's more important than posting at a specific time is posting at a time that's consistent for you so that your followers see it consistently at that time when you post. And I think social media, it's tough because it has this idea, I mean, in a sense, people are rewarded for posting more. And because of that, it kind of creates this pressure around constantly posting. But you can balance that with connecting more with your peers, engaging more, interacting more. In a lot of cases, I mean, on Twitter, if you engage with someone's post, they're more likely to see your stuff as well. So the more people you're engaging with, even if you're not posting constantly, you're going to be getting that engagement back because Twitter wants to see that. I mean, it's social media, so the more social you are in whatever capacity, the platform's really going to be happy about. And of course, there's like some nuance there, and like each platform is a little different, but with Twitter, that's the way that it works. I would, however, pay attention to where your audience comes from. Because if you're like me, I would say it depends on the platform, but like a majority of my viewers come from the United States. So in the United States, the timing, most people are going to be awake from like, the most popular times are like between 8 a.m. and like 3 p.m. or something. It's pretty much like someone's work day. So that's something to keep in mind. But what's better is if it's consistent for you and you can continue to do that consistently, that's going to be more powerful than you trying to make a particular time work for you. But if you have trouble posting at a certain time, there's also options to schedule your posts out, which I would recommend, because then you're not going to spend time like posting to all your platforms. But schedule your posts out, do it in a batch, and get that stuff done ahead of time. That's part of my like marketing method at the moment. That hour a day that I spend, part of that is like scheduling my posts that I have written in advance to be able to post on the platform. And when I do it in a batch like that, it saves me time. I'm not going back and forth. I'm not clicking between my social media. I'm not aimlessly scrolling, which happens when I post directly to the platform, and then I'm like, ooh, shiny, look at it, some art. Which I love to do, but I like to control that to my own when the time works for me. What program do you use to batch post? I use Buffer. I mostly do my batch posting between Twitter and Blue Sky. So I'm still like, you can use it for things like Instagram and stuff, but I haven't experimented with it on Instagram. And I know with Instagram, like you get some benefits from posting directly in the platform. So like I mostly use it for Twitter and Blue Sky. They're basically the same platform. And I'm kind of transitioning from Twitter at the moment to Blue Sky. So I'm using Buffer. I don't know what that looks like with other platforms though. I know in the past, Buffer kind of made this like really, if you cross-posted from like Instagram to Twitter to wherever, it kind of made this really spammy looking kind of post. So I'm a little weary about using it for anything other than Twitter and Blue Sky. But again, that was a long time ago and I don't know what that looks like now. So I'm still experimenting with that. There is a free version as well. That's what I'm using. I've been kind of playing around with how that works and how that serves me. So I don't know what the paid version is like. It seems like everything is paid now. Like nothing is a good free version anymore. Get scared sometimes nobody will see it. You can always repost it too, reshare it. But yeah, if you have a weird sleep schedule, I would schedule stuff. How do you come up with a game plan to transition to full-time art? Oh God, big question. Okay, so my recommendation here, know where you want to take your work and what you want your lifestyle to be before you make that transition. And I'll be honest, when I made that transition, I was doing freelance work in many different avenues. So I had a business and personal training. I was also doing freelance writing, and I was doing all that while I was learning art. And when I finally made the transition was when my art made more money than I was making doing the other things. So there are different ways to approach this, but I would recommend getting to a place where your art is paying the bills, or you have a comfortable cushion that if you were to leave your job, you would be safe. I don't recommend that though, unless you've been doing art for a long time and things are starting to like turn up. Because for me personally, it took me about 3 years of learning my art while at the same time promoting my art to finally make like a livable wage from it. 3 years of doing that. Granted, I had zero experience with marketing, zero experience with business. I was just kind of winging it. So to be honest, I feel like 3 years was pretty good. That's like more than, or that's less than it takes to like go to college and do it. And I didn't go to school for art. In about 3 years, I went full time with it. But I didn't do that. I didn't just like drop everything. I was doing, I was doing writing, I was doing personal training. So, but I kind of knew where I wanted to take it because I knew what I wanted my life to look like, and I knew how I wanted to spend my time and like all that stuff. So maybe ask yourself, if you're to do it, what do you want your day-to-day to look like and how do you want to spend your time, and make sure that that is sustainable. And then also, how much money do you need to make in order to make that jump, to safely make that jump? Because there's a lot of other things to think about when you are running your own business that you don't necessarily have to think about when you have a job somewhere else. Paying your taxes looks different. You have to keep track of all this stuff. You need to do your marketing. Like, it's not just, and I don't know who romanticized this idea, but it's not just showing up and drawing all day long and like that's your career. If you're working freelance, and again, like I don't have that experience in a studio. I've built my business over the past 10 years. So I don't have that experience in a studio, but that may look different. From what I've heard, it's much more stressful than that, working in a studio, just because of like layoffs, deadlines, people telling you constantly to like change what you're doing. So yeah, if you are doing it all on your own, you're running your own business, you're doing freelance, you're running your own socials, there's a lot that goes into that. Take a business course. It can't hurt. Honestly, it can't hurt. I think the core of it though is, I would find people who have done it. Find people who have done it, and if they're teaching how to do it, I would work with them. I would, whether it's like courses or mentorships or something with someone who's doing what you want to be doing, and ask them a lot of questions. Ask them what their life looks like. Make sure that that's in alignment with what you want, and then learn from them, because that's going to be the fastest way to get to where you want to be. You could take a business course and it could tell you nothing about making art a business. And again, there's a lot of nuance there. So if you are taking a business course, I think there's a lot of great information, but being able to know what to apply to your creative work and how that looks in a creative sense, I think that can also look different. Livable wage, cough, in this economy. It's hard, man. I think one of the hardest things is, as a creative individual, and I feel like this was something I was always open to because I knew I didn't want to go the traditional path. But if you're going to make it as a creative individual and you expect to just show up and do the art, I think that's an unrealistic expectation of how to make it. And for a creative person, I think it's very important to diversify where that income comes from, and also know that you need to have other skills. You need to have marketing skills. You need to be personable. You need to, in cases like this, like you need to be able to speak to people. Even teaching, I think like there's so many layers of skills that, people just want to show up and draw. And I think that if you're going to make a business of this, you need to have other skills alongside your art, which can feel a little bit demoralizing because oftentimes learning those skills takes away from drawing. But if you can find the skills that you're interested in that can benefit your drawing, then you can do what I did and create this sort of a lifestyle that looks like what you want it to be, and it's based on all these things that you were just curious about. And for me, I think it was like some of it felt kind of like I knew what I wanted, but a lot of it was very much an accident. Like I was very curious about psychology, and all of that tied into marketing. And I have a really fun time. I'm a very analytical person. So I have a really fun time, like analyzing social media content, like analyzing YouTube, I just like to see patterns in things. It's probably my ADHD. I don't know. So I enjoy that stuff. But for some creative people, it isn't very fun. And so it can be a little bit more of a grind. For me, it just felt like I was just exploring things that I found interesting. I actually feel like my ADHD is a superpower. That like it's when I learned about it and I began to understand it, I was like, this serves me so well. I'm just like I can hyper focus on things, like especially when I'm learning something new that I really enjoy. I would not change the fact that I have ADHD. And because I understand the things that distract me, I can now avoid those distractions. I think I'm just like very aware of my brain and very aware of my desires. I think one of the hardest things though is like my impulsivity. That can be really hard because like there's times where my brain just throws a tantrum and it's like you don't do that thing. Like you're just not going to do that thing. And I kind of have gotten to the point where it's like I've learned how to like discipline the child in my brain, you know? But there's so many aspects of my ADHD like that I think really serve what I do now. Um, yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's just me, like that's how I cope with it. I'm not medicated, so it's one of those things that like it has its moments, but yeah. There's definitely times where, people joke and there's like that part of ADHD where people are like, ooh, shiny, like, oh, you get distracted. And I have moments like that, I really do. So I was diagnosed about 11 years ago, 12 years ago, and I stopped medication very soon after I started. And so I kind of had to like learn how to manage it before, like for many, many years. And there was times where it was like unmanageable, even like years into my career. So it got really difficult at certain points. But when I feel like the more I learned about it and the more I learned about myself, it was easier for me to make it work for me than to kind of push against it. Non-med 2, definitely like to learn how to make that work for not against. Frey, I would talk to your doctor or your therapist about compensatory mechanisms. You can Google this as well, but like talk to your doctor because I don't want to like recommend anything for, I just don't want to recommend anything. But like I use non-compensatory mechanisms to stay on track with things. Like one of the things I know is that a lot of times if I'm working in the same room as someone else or someone's talking to me or like there's something distracting me, I know that it's very hard for me to focus. So oftentimes I work alone. Specifically because I know that that's something that holds me back. But there's a whole bunch of compensatory mechanisms that are really helpful for ADHD that they don't require medication. They're just like things that help. So I would recommend looking into those or talking to your doctor about them. This has been a really good chat. Y'all had some really great questions. Hopefully that was helpful. And yeah, follow me on socials. You guys can join Discord too. There's my public Discord and then there's my mentorship Discord. Thank you all. Great questions. Great talk. See you next time. Bye-bye.